Dear fellow coders, welcome to One Little Coder. In this Python tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to automate your Jupyter notebook using GitHub Actions for completely free. So GitHub Actions is something that you would have probably seen. A lot of people use this for package texting. A lot of people use it for CI/CD continuous development. If you have a library, if you want to add a patch, you can do that. People use it to create Twitter bots, so you can use this for a lot of different things, basically workflows. But I'm going to show you in this video how you can take a Jupyter notebook that looks like this, and also you can automate it using GitHub Actions. So this is something that we are using, a very latest feature from Jupyter notebook called Jupyter Execute. Just to give you an introduction, so we are going to first create a Jupyter notebook that looks like this. That's going to download a data set and then write it to a CSV in a local repository, and we are going to trigger the script, the Jupyter notebook, not as a Python script but actually as a Jupyter notebook, and we are going to automate this process using GitHub Actions so that it can run at a scheduled interval, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, every day, every week, based on a push, commit, whatever you want to have the trigger point, you can do that. So this is something that you can use to create a Twitter bot, or you can use to do a lot of things like update a dashboard, so many things like download data, but I'm not going to cover all those things. This video is specifically going to focus on how do you automate a Jupyter notebook, or how do you schedule a Jupyter notebook run using GitHub Actions, and that's what solely we are going to focus on. So let's get started without further ado. So I've got a Jupyter notebook that looks like this, a collab notebook, and inside this collab notebook, as you can see, I've got a pandas library, and then I am reading a CSV file from a URL. So I've got the CSV file, I'm reading it, and then I'm storing that as an object called df. So let me run this. So you can see that I've got an object df.head, and you can see that we have got a pandas data frame here that is available for us. For now, I'll delete this. This is not required, but you can see that the data frame is ready. Next, what I want to do is I want to write this df data frame as an output CSV file. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to do this at a scheduled interval, right? So imagine this is like your weather report, or this is like your favorite quote, or this is like your stock market data. So now you want to take this, extract this every single day, and then write it to your local repository. So every single time when you write this, you want to write it with a different file name. Otherwise, what would happen? It might overlap, it might overwrite. So to avoid that, what I'm going to do here is, there are a lot of different ways you can download, you can append date to it, you can do a lot of different things, but I'm going to, just for the sake of showing you how to do that, I'm going to generate a random number and append that random number to the CSV file. So every time I run this thing, it's going to write a different CSV file, and I'm going to show you. So right now you can see that there is no CSV file here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file name, and I'm going to use that file name, and I'm going to write that CSV file. So after this process, you would see a new CSV file here, right? I've got 5102. Okay, so now I can run this again, and then you can see that there'll be a different CSV file here. So let's refresh this, and then you can see a different CSV. So the idea is, imagine that you are trying to get weather report. Imagine you're trying to get stock market prices. Imagine you're trying to get some data from internet which you want to schedule for a scheduled interval. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 24 hours, once in a week, once in a month. Every time you get it, you want to write it using a different name. So that's what we're trying to match with this use case, right? So every time we run the script, we want to write a different CSV file. That's the whole objective. At this point, we have got the Jupyter notebook, right? Now, I'm going to teach you how to take this Jupyter notebook and then schedule it or automate using GitHub Action. If you are not familiar with GitHub Action, I would strongly recommend you to see this. A lot of people who discuss about data science operations, MLOps, automation, package development, software development strongly use GitHub Actions. You should definitely check it out. One of the most advantageous free service from GitHub, I would say, in my opinion, that there are a lot of things that you get from GitHub, but GitHub Action is definitely one of the greatest things. You can set up your CI/CD pipeline, you can set up even data pipeline, you can set up any sort of automated workflow for your software project or whatever project is. So we're going to use GitHub Action, and then we're going to schedule this notebook. For that, for us to do, first step is we need to download this notebook. I'm going to go here and then say download IPynb. So I'm going to just download it as a IPynb file, and I'm going to call it download IPynb. So it's a notebook format, and that is downloaded, as you can see at this point. So now I have to go create a new repository. Before I move forward, I would like to tell you that this entire concept I got to know from this repository, which is run by Ben Welch, so Palewire. So thanks to Ben Welch for this Twitter bot, I got this entire idea from this. I'm going to use some part of this YAML file that is available here as part of GitHub Actions. So I would like to give the credit to this repository, Ben Welch, Palewire, who created this, and then also shared it with us, so which we are going to use to schedule our Jupyter notebook. So now that we know that where did we get our code from, so next thing is I have to go to my GitHub repository and create a new repository. So after I create a new repository, I need to give a name. So I can simply say daily file download, something like this. Okay, daily file download, and then I can add a description. So what is the description that I want to give? I want to say download file daily using Jupyter notebook. Okay, and if you want, I can initialize with the readme license. Okay, I'm not initializing with the license. So create a repository. At this point, you would see an empty repository, right? So you don't have anything in the repository. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a very simple thing. I'm going to go to actions, and then I'm going to say create a new action, right? So there are a lot of different actions that you can use it out of box. For example, if I go and then search for Python, you could see actions like Django action, so build and test a Django project, PyLint, Python application, Python package using Anaconda, Python package, publish Python package, deploy a Python app to an Azure web application. So we have a lot of these workflows that are already pre-created for us, which we can use, and they are categorized under different categories. But honestly, like none of these things serve our purpose at this point. Why? Because what we want to do is we want to do a very simple task. We want to schedule a cron job. Like you can read more about what is a cron job, CRONGOB. This is more like scheduler. So you can read about cron job. What we want to do is we want to schedule a cron job that will run this Jupyter notebook that we have just downloaded from Google Colab, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I don't want any of this. I want to just set up my workflow myself. So set up a workflow yourself. At this point, it's going to create a hidden folder. You can see .github, and then it has got a folder of workflows, and inside that there is a YAML file, and it's a very nice YAML file. You can see that this is a basic workflow to get you started, all these like very nice things. So now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to change anything. It has a lot of information. I'm just going to start commit at this point, commit message, commit new file, and then this GitHub action, I can go verify the GitHub action. You can see that there is a GitHub action. So at this point, you can see that the GitHub action has not been run even once. The GitHub action is already ready. Okay, it started running as I'm speaking, but you can see, right, we have created our first GitHub action. But is that GitHub action what we want? No, it's not what we want. We need to change the GitHub action. But before we do that, I would like to tell you that we need to now upload our IPynb file, the Jupyter notebook that we just downloaded from Google Colab. So I'm going to drag this and then drop it here and then say save this file, upload this file. So you can see it's being uploaded, commit the changes. Okay, so after we do this, now in this repository we have 3 files. I'll quickly show you the 3 files. 1, we have got the readme file which we created at the start. 2, we have got the Jupyter notebook which we want to actually schedule or automate. And then 3, the hidden folder where you would see the main YAML file that drives or that triggers, or not triggers, that actually acts as the core for the GitHub action. So now all these are done. So now we are going to use another very popular feature of GitHub, which is I'm going to change this interface that you just see now as a Visual Studio Code interface. Mostly if you have seen my previous videos, you would know I'm going to duplicate this tab, and instead of github.com, I'm going to call github.dev, right? GitHub. I think I want to change this repository name. I can call it, instead of this, I can call it Jupyter Automation GH Actions. It's such a big name, but like it makes sense. Like at this point, I would like to keep it. Where do I change the name? Yeah, rename it. and then let's see, yeah, the name is changed, Jupyter Automation GH Actions. So that's nice. We can change the name here if you want, but what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you how to convert this into a Visual Studio Code interface. Instead of github.com, I'm going to say github.dev and then run this. Now you can see there is a new web editor that is getting ready for us. So in this web editor, we are going to change all our code. And while we are speaking, I've already prepared my GitHub Actions YAML file. So while I'm explaining you line by line, I'm going to copy and paste it. I mean, it's not very easy for anybody to type while they're actually talking. At least for me, it's not very easy. So I'm going to just copy and paste it while we are going to go through it. So at this point, what do you see? You see a README file, right? So you see a README file, and you can see a GitHub action as well, where you can run the action and see. So the README file looks a little empty to me. Let's see. Okay, open the README file. You can see the name. So I'm going to change the name first. So Jupyter Notebook Automation with, okay, I'll just call it Jupyter Notebook Automation with GitHub Actions. This repo demos the action by downloading a CSV and storing it in a repository. Okay, so now this is done, but you would not see this change here until now. Like, do you see the change? No. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. You can see the change in icon, and then I'm going to go here and then I'm going to commit it. So my update in README, and then I'm going to commit it. After I commit it, you can come back and then you can see that this has been changed. At the same time, you can go to the actions and then you can see the action is running. The reason why action is running is because the current action, the GitHub action that we have configured, is something that runs every time a new commit is made. But do we want that? No. At least for our case, we want to schedule a cron job. We don't want to schedule it based on a trigger point, which is like a commit or push, whatever it is. So what I'm going to now show you is I'm going to go to the files. I'm going to go inside .github. I'm going to edit the main YAML file. So this is the main YAML file that is powering the GitHub action. So first thing I'm going to change is I'm going to change the name. I don't like the name CI, so I'm going to say Jupyter. Okay, Jupyter is the name. And next thing, how do you want the trigger to work? I don't want the trigger to work based on something, right? I don't want it to happen when there is a push. I don't want to happen when there is a commit or whatever, right? I want this to happen when there is a schedule, right? Based on the schedule, I want this to happen. So I'm going to say, okay, so you can see this allows you to run this workflow manually from the actions tab. So within the workflow, we are going to say we want it to be, we want it to be scheduled. So now the question is, what is this, right? You've got 0 star 3 slash blah blah blah. So what is this, right? So now for you to understand this thing, you need to understand a little bit about cron job. So now this is a cron job, but you can go online and then say cron job calculator. So just enter cron job calculator, go to cron tab guru, and then copy and paste this. Okay, we're going to go to our VS Code, copy this and paste it here. Paste it here. It says at minute 0 past every 3 hours, which means for every 3 hours this is going to run. So that's what it is. So now you can say, I don't want this to happen, I want maybe this to happen. Now it says at minute 0 on day of month 5. Oh, I don't want this to happen, maybe I want this to happen at minute 5. So it's going to happen once. So like this, you have different ways to get the correct cron job that you want. So we are going to stick with what we have. At minute past 0 past every 3rd hour, this is going to run. Let's stick to this. Or if you want to change this, like you can change this at minutes past 0 every 24th hour, it's going to run. So you can just make it run 24th hour. So once in a day. So we're going to use this. So copy this, come back here, paste it. So our cron schedule is now correct. So we have said what is the name of the workflow. We have said when do we want it to be triggered based on a schedule, and the cron is this. Okay, so at this point we know this is our schedule. But the problem is now, what do you want to run, right? What do we want to run? we actually want to run a Jupyter notebook that is written in Python, right? So now we need to figure out how to include Python here. So for that, I'm going to straight away go to Google and then say GitHub Actions Python. So now you would get this link, which is actions/setup Python, which says use this GitHub action with your project. So I'm going to go to the marketplace and then see how it looks. This is the GitHub action marketplace. So now when you come here, you can see a lot of different snippets. So this action sets up a Python environment for using actions. You can do a lot of things here, but what I want for my purposes, I want to find out how do I install libraries using pip. So I'm going to Control F, pip, and then look for pip. So now when you want to deal with pip, you have multiple different ways. One is pip env, where you can create environment and then you can use a pip file and then you can install it with that. But you know, like just for simplicity, I'm not taking that route. I'm going to simply look for how to install pip from requirements.txt. Okay, so here I've got the answer that I wanted to look for, which is I've got the steps and I also know how to run the requirements.txt file. But do we already have a requirements.txt? No, we are going to create it and I'm going to show you what all things that we need to put in that. But for now, we are going to copy this here, go back to our editor and then say the steps that we want. The steps that we want is, so you can see the first step already, which is checkout, which is to access this particular repository. And then the next thing, we are going to delete everything else. And then we are going to say, these are our steps. Just make sure that it's ordered correctly. We don't want steps. We don't want this as well. And then we have everything. Okay. So one of the good practices, what you can do is you can start assigning names to it. You can say, okay, this is my ID, which is, let's say, repo, right? And then, is it too small? Maybe I should make it big. Yeah, I think probably it was too small. Repo. And then I can say within the repo, I can say the name. The name is, what is the name? Repo checkout. Okay, the first step. We can say first step. And we can start putting whatever we want under that. Okay, so the first thing is done. So the next thing I'm going to say ID Python. Okay, and inside that I'm going to give a name. Once again, name Python setup. Okay, and then this one, and then we know we want to run Jupyter, we want to run pip install requirements.txt, Python setup and packages install. That's probably a relevant name. And I'll show you where these things will help. Like whatever we are doing now, you might think like, what is this guy doing? Why is he wasting time in, you know, changing the name? But I'll show you where it would help. Python setup and packages installation. Okay, but right now at this point you know that we don't have a requirements.txt file. We are yet to create that, but I'll show you what to do with that. So the next thing what we want to do now is we want to create a new ID, right? We want to say ID. What is the name of the ID? The indentation is a problem. The name of the ID is Jupyter. I can say Jupyter notebook execution, and I don't want the users, I just want to run it. I want to run this saying this is pip install requirements.txt is not what we want. We actually want Jupyter execute download.pynb. So this is the file that we want to execute, and where do we want to run it? We want to run it on bash. So we have specified what do we want to run, right? So in fact, like we can create two separate IDs for this. One is like for Python setup, the other one is for pip install, but I'm not doing those things, just for your information. So we have said Jupyter is the ID, name is Jupyter notebook execution, and then we are going to run, this is the command that we want to run, Jupyter execute download.pynb. So this is a big confusing place. I will let you know in the later section why are we using execute and we shouldn't use run. Okay, and then we have got the shell and we are good. At this point we are good. The reason why we are good is I'll quickly let you know. At this point, let's save this repository here. Okay, so I'm going to save and I'm going to go commit updated the GitHub Actions. Okay, so now you can see when you go there, will this run? Let's go refresh this. Okay, what is it showing? GitHub Actions. So does it run now? No, it didn't run. The reason it didn't run is because until this point we had the workflow to run whenever there was a push, a commit was happening. So we have changed that from that to a cron job. So now it will run every 24 hours, or we have to manually trigger it, which I'll show you in a short while. So now everything is set up for our GitHub action, but the main thing that is still not set up for us is we need a requirements.txt file. So now I'm going to create a new file. Go here, create a new file, and then say what is the first package library that you want? Okay, I want to install Jupyter Lab because that's quite important for me to execute the Jupyter command. The Jupyter command comes from Jupyter Lab. Okay, now I want to say Jupyter execute. Okay, that comes from NB client. Okay, so Jupyter comes from Jupyter Lab, execute comes from NB client, and then of course we are using pandas in our code, so we need pandas, right? So let's say you're using Beautiful Soup, you need to use Beautiful Soup there. You are using request, you are using TensorFlow, whatever you're using, you need to make sure that you're giving all these things. So these two are required for the infrastructure, and this is required for the code itself. So now we have got the three files. I'm going to save it, and then it's going to ask me what is the name that I want to give. I'm going to say I want to give the name requirements.t. Did I make a typo? Requirements.txt. Okay, save it. At this point we have everything that we wanted in place. So we have the Jupyter notebook, we have the YAML file that is edited, we have the requirements.txt file that is edited. So now I'm going to go back and commit saying added requirements. I think I'm going to make a typo somewhere here and save it. So now I'm going to go back to the repository and then refresh this and then see if all these are there. Okay, we have got the requirements.txt, we have got the download.ipyonb, we have got the readme, and let's just for the sake of checking, let's check the workflow as well. So we've got the Jupyter workflow, we have got the cron, we have got it runs on Ubuntu, it runs check out the repo, Python, install libraries, Jupyter. I think will look good. So Jupyter execute download.ipynb. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the actions, right? And it is not running still, right? So I'm going to I have two ways to run this. One, I can go here and then I can click run and I can run it, right? But during development, what you can also do is you can go here on your VS Code web, click this GitHub action, and then say click this, and you can click this to run and enter it, and now you have automatically triggered the workflow. So you can see now when you refresh this, you can see that the Jupyter workflow has been triggered. So now this has started. You can see the queue. If you want to see what is happening, you can click this and then you can further click this. When you click this, you would see all these sections. Okay, first is repo checkout, we gave the name. Python setup and packages installation, I should have given this separately, but you know, of course it is there, which means our Python is set up. Now packages are getting installed. You can read, you can see where it is getting installed. Like this is like a good place for you to understand logs. So now all these libraries are installed. Now your Jupyter notebook execution is done, and then do you see any error? Nothing. So all these are successfully done, right? So first setting up the job, repo checkout, Python setup and packages installation, pip install requirements, all the Python libraries that we wanted, Jupyter notebook execution happened successfully, post Python setup and blah blah blah. So I don't know what are these things, but everything is done. So by default, what should happen? What happened when we ran here? When we ran here, we got new CSV file. So let's go check whether there is new CSV file. There wouldn't be a CSV file. I'll tell you upfront. Do you see any CSV file? No. Do you see any new change? No. But the workflow executed successfully. The code, in fact, very explicitly says that you need to write a CSV file. So now what is missing? That's a valid question, right? So this is where I want to pause and then let you know. Let's say you decide to create a Twitter bot. Now you're going to read something online and you're going to process everything within the Jupyter notebook, and then you're going to tweet. So the next section that I'm going to focus does not matter to you. So the next section that I'm going to focus matters to you only if you want to add something to the repository, just like our example. What is the example that we are trying to do? We are trying to download a CSV and store it inside our repository. So if you're going to edit the repository, if you're going to add a new file to the repository, just like I showed, right? So maybe you want to download stock prices, maybe you want to download cryptocurrency prices or weather report, any sort of thing. If you want to do some change to the repository, then the next section matters to you. Otherwise you can skip the next section. Like next section, I'm going to teach you how to commit a change to the repository with the file, right? Of course with the file. So otherwise nothing would, the workflow would execute correctly, but you would not see anything here. So that's the next section. I'm going to make a bulk copy and paste here. So to be honest, right? So what is a bulk copy and paste? So I'm going to copy this file and then I'm going to paste it here. So what does it say? It says add new files in the data folder. We're not adding it in data folder. Commit along with other modified files. So we are saying commit the ID name, commit the files, specifying the local username. All these are automated. You don't have to enter any environment where you don't have to do anything. So just the git commands that you know, git star, like a git add star, adding all the new files, making a commit message with the current date, today's date, and then pushing it back to the origin. And then for GitHub Actions to access the repository, there is an internal hidden GitHub token that you know that itself can access, and then the username is GitHub Action. So from the username GitHub Action, using the token that is already there, you don't have to do anything. We are going to commit the changes after this has happened. So if you do not commit the changes, you wouldn't see the .csv file here. So that's the main point. So now we are going to commit it. Okay. So now first step, what we are going to do, we are going to just save the GitHub Actions. Go to this and then say added commit to workflow and save it. Now nothing is going to happen until you manually trigger. So I'm going to go to the actions. I'm going to click Jupyter and then I'm going to run it. So it's asking me where do I want to run it, trigger it, and then I can go here. Now go to GitHub Actions, and then you can see that manually I have triggered this. So the reason why I'm manually triggering is to show you how this is done. Otherwise, you know, you can just wait for 24 hours and then see if this is going to happen. But I cannot make a video for 24 hours, right? So I mean, it's a terrible joke. That is why I'm manually triggering this, even though we have scheduled it using a cron job. So once again, click this, open it, 16 seconds, 17 seconds. You can see now the Python library installation. Like the more number of libraries that you have, more time it would take. So every step, you know, depends upon how your code is, what are the things that you are trying to do, all these things. So yeah, notebook installation is done, commit is done. Okay, looks like we have hit a success here. So oh wow. So you know why you see a green color tick mark here? You see green color tick mark here because I've spent so many hours in trying to get this right. I mean, that's the whole point. Like I've explained in multiple videos that the reason you see something flawless in the video just like this is primarily because I've done so many mistakes before this video to make sure that the video doesn't look bad, right? I don't want to waste your time, you know, when I am debugging, going to Google, Stack Overflow, going through GitHub issues, Discourse. I'm not doing all those things primarily because I don't want you to waste your time in doing that, but I just want you to know, if you're a beginner especially, that I make a lot of mistakes and I correct that mistake, and that is why you see a video that doesn't have any mistake. Okay, now going back to GitHub Actions, you can see, oh, successfully we've got 2620_df.csv. So what happens when we run this again? Let's try it out. And this time, instead of going and triggering it from our VS Code, I'm going to go to GitHub Actions. I'm going to click the workflow and I'm going to say run manually, run the workflow. Run the workflow. Okay, so where do you want to run the workflow from? Oops, did I even click it? Is it going to run? Yeah, I think it's running. Let me refresh this and see if it's going to run. Yes, it's queued, and let's wait for, like, basically it takes around 43 to 46 seconds, and then let's see this, and then I'm going to move on to the next section where I'm going to explain you what is Jupyter execute or Jupyter run is going to do, and why do we have to use Jupyter execute, not Jupyter run. So 19 seconds are done. Let's click this and see what's happening here. Did I click it? Yep. I'm clicking it. Meanwhile, I think what we can do, okay, let's wait for it. So when you are using VS Code, so at this point you would not see that file. So maybe what you have to do is you have to go here and then pull all the files, like, right? So you can pull so that those files would be here. Like the CSV was not there before, so after you pull it, it would come here. So maybe that sync is something that you need to make sure that you are not doing any git merge issues, conflicts. Yep, this is done, and you can see everything is done. Go here and then see there should be a second CSV. Yes, so we have got successfully the second CSV that has been written 44 seconds back. And when we go here and then we can, if you want, we can like pull everything, and yes, you see the files would ideally show up here. And yeah, that's it. So we have successfully managed to automate the Jupyter notebook using GitHub Actions. Now you might ask me, how was it recently possible? What is the new feature? Like the CSV files are here. The very recent feature that we got is Jupyter execute command. Jupyter execute was not available for a long time, at least from my understanding. So like I said, I got to know from Palewire, Ben Welch. So one thing that you need to keep in mind is, before Jupyter execute was available, Jupyter run was there. What Jupyter run does is, Jupyter run tries to convert your Jupyter notebook into a Python script, and then it would run. What happens when you do that is, if your notebook has empty cells like this, then now this is treated as null, and then you would get error. That's why you should not use Jupyter run for this particular use case. You should use only Jupyter execute, which directly executes the Jupyter notebook, not the Python script that is extracted from the Jupyter notebook. Point one. So don't use Jupyter run, use Jupyter execute. Now the problem with Jupyter execute, the next problem that you would see is this message. So Jupyter run is actually a Jupyter client CLI which runs Python script, not a notebook. NB client has a Jupyter execute CLI, which is what you should use. So where does the Jupyter execute come from? NB client. The most important aspect is, we renamed it to Jupyter run at some point, but realized that it conflicted with Jupyter client. So we reverted the change. Sorry for the confusion. So it is possible that you have seen some other tutorial or some tweet or some document where somebody might have written an article where they might have said that you need to use Jupyter run, but that is not relevant now, because you need to use Jupyter execute, and that execute comes from NB client. So when you use Jupyter run, it would run, but it would throw error. When you use Jupyter execute, make sure that you are using it from NB client. So there are a couple of things that happened here. You can see as recent as it is, like December 2021, and David has responded to this thing, and this was a gold mine for me, especially after facing a lot of errors. Finally I figured out that what was a mistake that I was doing. So I wanted to emphasize here, saying that use Jupyter execute, and you have to use it from NB client, but Jupyter run exists. Jupyter execute was there, like a lot of conflicts are there. So this is the right code. So now all these are done, right? So you've got an understanding of what the YAML file is, you've got understanding of the each section, you've got understanding of the code, you have manually verified it, you have scheduled the commit, all these are fine. So now the next question is, okay, fine. Now, if I want to use it in my own project, how should I do it? There are a lot of different ways to do it. Way one, the easiest way, you just fork this, okay? Go change your Jupyter notebook. Like, you are going to, of course, make a new commit, right? And then you can run this. The easiest way. You don't have to do anything else. Just fork it, go make changes to your Jupyter notebook, and manually trigger and see if it works fine. This is your option one. Option two, you can go inside my repository. I'm going to link it in the YouTube description. You can check it out. You can go inside my repository, and then you can copy the main.yaml file. And then, like I said, how do you create a setup? How do you set up your own like manual workflow using GitHub Actions? You can copy this entire thing and then go paste it there, right? This is your second option. The third option is, you can download my repository locally and make all the changes that you want and commit it to your repository, instead of unlike how I am using VS Code web, you can actually use it on local machine. So that's your option 3. In all these cases, you need this main.yaml file. You can call it anything that you want, but you need this file, and make sure that all the references that we have given are correct here. For example, Right now my Jupyter notebook name is download.ipynb. So your Jupyter notebook name should be the same, otherwise you should make the change here. Requirements.txt file, again make sure that it is available in the path. And the next thing, this section is required only if you're going to commit something, but if you're going to make a Twitter bot or something, you don't need this thing. So make sure like you check all these things. That's why it's very important for you to go to Github Actions workflow log and understand what is happening there. Otherwise, I think you are fine. I would love to see if you make any automation. Like I said, this could be downloading dataset, updating dashboard, creating a Twitter bot, creating a Reddit bot, like whatnot. You can, like, the potential is enormous. Thanks to GitHub, who's definitely not sponsoring this video. I mean, like, imagine I'm sponsored by Microsoft. So thanks to GitHub for making this available for us. Github Actions, this is wonderful option. And also thanks to the Jupyter team and also Ben Welch, who made this possible. Like, I wouldn't have known this amazing thing had I not done this thing. Let me know in the comment section if you would like to see any automation project. I would definitely try out something, but otherwise I hope this video was helpful to you, and I hope you stay safe, take care of your family. Happy coding.